Hey, payday, you want payday? I know that. Say it ain't so. Canelo Alvarez says that Terence Crawford lost to Israil Madrimov. That's right. He said, in his opinion, Crawford lost that fight to Madrimov. Let's get into this and hear what Canelo had to say. Subscribe to the channel. Roll the clip.
What do you make of Crawford's performance against Madrimov?
For me, I think he lost. He lost the fight or draw.
Okay.
Or could be in the other side. He knows why his weight class is there, right?
He was saying your name a lot all week. I was out there in LA.
Because he want to sell the fight. If they don't talk about me, they don't say anything.
Would you look at a fight with Crawford? Because in the past you've told me no.
If the money is right, I mean,
the money's got to be big for that.
I don't like fighters who move around, you know.
Weight classes.
Yeah.
Would you make of Crawford's performance against Madrimov?
For me,
he said, "For me,
he lost. He lost the fight or draw."
He said, "I think he lost or draw."
Okay.
Or could be in the other side.
Or it could have went to the other way with Madrimov.
He knows why his weight class is there.
He knows why weight class. Man, I try to tell you, listen, I'm the best in the business. Y'all just got to accept it. Best in the business, and it's not even close. Canelo Alvarez, he spoke his piece. He said he lost. Now, me, I'm going to tell you straight up, I don't beat around the bush. Steak and potatoes. I got to rewatch the fight because when you're hosting an event like the BOXINGEGO watch party, which I created and popularized, right? Best in the business. I wasn't worried about scoring. And me, I'm a straight shooter. At first, I was keeping score, but then I'm reading comments and hosting the show. So I would like to rewatch it just to make sure I get to concentrate and things like that. All in all, I think it was a solid fight, and there were a couple things at play. I think Madrimov lacked experience. You see how I just break it down so easily, so effortlessly, and unbiased. Madrimov, here's his deal. He only had 11 fights entering the fight with Terence Crawford. He hadn't faced anyone even remotely on Crawford's level. He acquitted himself well, I will say, given that he had the amateur experience and, you know, considering the 11 fights. But all in all, he just didn't have the experience. So in a couple of those moments, I think he could have tried to impose his size a bit more, impose his will. Like he was saying in the pre-build that this is his division. It's ain't Crawford's division. So I think he should have been more assertive at spots to show that I'm the stronger person. But I attribute that to two things: inexperience and knowing what to do. It's easy to say that, but then when you got to do it, it's something else. And then two, Terence Crawford is a great fighter, so he was giving him things to think about. He had an impeccable, subtle but sneaky and a body attack that was effective. Terence Crawford. And Crawford, he's the type that make you think about your move. And Terence Crawford is a fighter where you don't want to make too many mistakes, because later in the fight there were some times where Madrimov's head was on the center and he didn't move it quick enough, and you know, Crawford shoot the uppy, clip, and he was clipping him with like a couple more punches, and it is what it is. But I think it was a pretty decently tight fight considering, like, and this is what I warned you guys about. Nobody would believe me when I was making the Ego Weight Watcher videos and I was saying that this is going to be a tough fight. And I don't really like the fight for Bud because, yeah, it's a champion. But again, people like myself who understand boxing and know boxing, this is not a champion like when Floyd fought Oscar De La Hoya, a guy who had been long respected well before that fight. Or Miguel Cotto. It's not like a Hall of Fame champion. It's not a guy that even had title defenses. Madrimov had 11 fights and he just won the fight to claim a vacant title because Jermell Charlo, the true undisputed guy, you got to keep in mind, people do not know about boxing. Jermell lost at 168, a division he really had no place being at. I told you I'm not big on the weight class jumping and stuff. He bypassed 160, no tune-ups, didn't acclimate to division, and got the Canelo call, and then that's what people are judging him off of. Jermell is still a top-rated person at 154. People are forgetting this because the Canelo fight was one-sided, but again, that wasn't at his weight class. That was at 168. So I still rate Jermell Charlo. But in him doing that and getting the Canelo fight, it opened up vacancies, and he had to relinquish or get stripped of belts, yada, yada, yada. And then that's when Madrimov in March, I think it was March 8th, fought Kurbanov. That wasn't a big name. Kurbanov is not a name that rings bells like Virgil Ortiz or Jermell or Fundora or Tim Tszyu or Crawford or whoever. Is just not that type of name. So the Crawford Bud buddies, they keep referencing that Madrimov was a champion. Yes, he was a champion, but he was a champion for about 4 months through a vacancy. So that's not as impressive as you're making it out to be. If Jermell, let's say in a magical, mythical world, didn't fight Canelo at 168, and then Crawford moved up and beat Jermell Charlo, that would look better because Jermell Charlo was the king of the division, not a guy with 11 fights who had never been a champion up until March 8th. So now you guys see what I was talking about. This wasn't a match that was going to do much for Crawford. Crawford's had belts before. He has accolades, and as he calls it, he got the 2 ESPYs, and he already has little milestones like that. So just getting another belt against I guess a non-factor or a non-established champion, that name doesn't ring bells and there's no name recognition there, especially here in America. Nobody was really talking about Madrimov. And then now you got people like Canelo Alvarez who are saying you lost the fight or it should have been a draw. And I just find it funny because this is what I predicted. This wasn't really a beneficial fight for Crawford's profile. People, they've getting mad at me for my perspective. Good. I don't care because I'm going to keep saying it. Like I said, y'all can't prove me wrong. Everything I said is true. You got literally Canelo did his Berlanga press conference and he's saying the same thing that other fans are saying, that Crawford lost. Go look in the comment section. You know, people are saying he lost, whether you agree to it or not. Because I told you my perspective, I got to rewatch the fight, to be honest. And I don't know when I'll make time to watch it because for real, it wasn't like an instant classic where it was the best fight where I'm just chomping at the bit to rewatch it like other fights. There are certain fights that are more in your face. Like this year, I feel like Frank Martin, Gervonta Davis is a fight that I would rather watch again, right, than Crawford Madrimov. So I don't know when I'll make time to watch it and rescore it and all that. But it was a pretty tight fight. And it's funny because the Bud Buddies and guys like Shakur Stevenson, whose big homie is Crawford, Shakur is saying on social media, hey, if you thought it was a close fight, then you're a casual fan. And for me, I hate when people make statements that strong and like blanket statements. Like if you don't agree that Little Caesars has the best pizza, you don't know about pizza. Like it's just too extreme when what you're saying is at best subjective, right? Or if you don't agree Pulp Fiction is the best movie ever, then you don't know about movies. I mean, it doesn't work like that. You know, Pulp Fiction, I personally like it, but maybe it's not someone's cup of tea. It doesn't mean that they don't know anything about cinema or the history of cinema. And I hate when boxers, a lot of times, like Shakur, they play this role like nose in the air, like you guys just don't know what you're looking at. But there's a lot of people who may not know what they're looking at, but there's also a lot of people who do know what they're looking at when it comes to boxing. And to make a statement like Shakur Stevenson did, saying, hey, if you thought it was a close fight, you don't know ish about boxing. Well, Canelo, he doesn't know. He's a casual. Canelo doesn't know ish about boxing with 60 plus fights and, you know, only a couple losses since boxing. And he's been boxing since age 15. You see how the statement kind of looks foolish? The bottom line is it was a pretty competitive fight. And I truly think that Bud realized that it was closer than it should be. So he stepped on the gas in the later rounds, in the championship rounds. And to say what Shakur is saying and what some people are saying, oh, it's not close, you're actually taking away from Terence Crawford's performance, because one of the most, and it's funny because the Bud Buddies will say, I hate Crawford and I'm anti-Crawford, but you're taking away credit to what Crawford did. He was in a tough fight and he started to pull away in some of them championship rounds, which is what you want to see from a champion. So I actually gave Crawford a lot of credit for not only moving up, but having that doggedness to him, where if it's a little too close for comfort, you're showing that willingness to win. So it's funny because people like Shakur Stevenson, who's friends with Bud Crawford and the Bud Buddies, they're telling you it was a blowout, which actually negates and makes it look less impressive, because what Shakur is saying is the fight wasn't close at all and it wasn't competitive. So Crawford stepping it up in some of the championship rounds, according to them, it was already a whitewash. It was already a landslide victory and a blowout. So what he did in the championship rounds, you shouldn't be impressed with, because he was already winning every single round. I don't see it that way. Again, off of first viewing, without me rewatching this stuff, I think it was a competitive fight. I think they were canceling each other out, because this is my truest opinion. I'm not going to go on the Canelo route and say that Terence Crawford lost, because, again, I got to watch and replay it. But the way they canceled each other out is if you have a +1, +1, and a -1, that's 0. A lot of those early rounds was +1 minus -1, which kind of nullified the other and canceled the other one out. Meaning, I believe that Team Crawford planned for a more reckless and aggressive Madrimov, right? People were sending me clips. They were like, Ego, you're wrong. And this is the funny thing about how good I am at my job. I gave you my honest opinion, and it turned out to be right, that the fight was going to be tougher than expected. Madrimov wasn't going to get stopped. He didn't get dropped. He didn't get stopped. I was right. You were wrong. People were sending me clips of Madrimov versus Eric, and it was Madrimov like lunging and reaching and like doing these like kind of wild winging shots. And they said, I'm not impressed, Ego. I think you're wrong. Madrimov is going to get knocked out. He's no match for Terence Crawford. I told you, and I have the videos and the content to prove it. So you could believe me or Shakur Stevenson or the Bud Buddies, but I'm pretty sure Shakur had Jared Anderson, his homie, beating Bacoli. And I'm pretty sure Shakur Stevenson said that Bud was going to dominate and knock out Madrimov, which didn't happen. I didn't say either of those things, so the stuff I did say actually came true. So I'm just a silly YouTuber, but my analysis on this game is second to none. So the bottom line is, I really feel that Team Crawford, they were expecting a sloppier, inexperienced, and more aggressive Madrimov, but him having all them Amis, them amateur fights, 300 plus amateur fights, he showed a lot more composure, which made it for a more difficult fight early, because he had great feints, great movement, not much on the head movement side, but in terms of foot movement and like faster foot speed than other stationary Crawford opponents like Errol Spence maybe, or whoever else. And he was like bouncy and real jittery and like, you know, almost like a little bit of a Emmanuel Burton, Emmanuel Augustus, drunken monkey, snake charmer type of style, where it was creating that moving target. Plus he was the bigger man with more experience at this weight class. It gave Crawford problems. So again, you can believe me or believe Shakur Stevenson, but right now you have Canelo Alvarez, who is saying that Crawford won or a draw, which is what some fans are saying. So it is what it is. You guys could agree or disagree, but nonetheless, now you see people like Ryan Garcia, Teofimo, and Janovic, they're calling out Crawford, saying he's trash, saying he's getting older and not looking the same. Fans are doing the same thing. So you can't tell me this was a success. You know, Crawford, I think he showed what he's always shown, but he just looked more human in doing it. And for me, I think he created more space between the reality and the need for a Canelo and Crawford fight to ever happen. Because the fact that you didn't obliterate a 154-pound guy and your power looked more manageable, like fighters can maybe deal with it better at this division, things like that, and you didn't like drop him or hurt him or nearly get him out or stop him or anything, it just made the Canelo fight at 68 look a lot less appealing, and that's my honest opinion. And then in addition to that, now you have Crawford and Madrimov being assessed by Canelo, and he's saying that Crawford lost the fight. And Eddie Hearn saying the same thing. So whether you believe it or not, these are spokespeople for boxing. So the fans are going to eat this up. So again, like I've been saying, this fight was going to be tougher than expected. And I don't think it really is a good continuation and follow-up from the Errol Spence fight for obvious reasons. Errol Spence, you got credit because what you did and how you looked versus a known name. This is the danger with fighting someone like Madrimov is people were like, who is Madrimov? He only got 11 fights. Who is this guy? It was not really a great buildup. Madrimov was respectful. Crawford was respectful. So it was boring in the buildup. And then on top of that, this guy from out of nowhere that people didn't know and weren't familiar with, people are saying that Crawford looked vulnerable. So if anything, you helped put him on the map more than you pulled away and showed that you're the Superman that you've looked to be at 35, 40, and 47. And now you got people like Canelo saying you lost the fight. Boom.